Hi, everyone, and welcome to Cosmic Akashic Circles on Thursdays. And I've got a very direct request and a very direct message today, channeling today. And I'm just going to start in on that momentarily. And first, the one announcement I want to make is if you are at all curious to activate your own light language, my workshop is coming up next Friday, October 17th. And it's going to be a workshop replete with teachings and examples and a very powerful attunement to your own light language, and also a journey in your Akashic records to bring forward energy from other incarnations where you have been already someone who knew and used and spoke light language. So if that calls to you at all, you can go right to SuzanneAlexandria.com. Right on the homepage, you'll see the registration link. And I would love to see you next Friday. And it would be delightful to see you all. And with that, I want to go right into today's transmission. The request was to hear from the guides more on how did ancient civilizations on this planet utilize light language? I'm sorry, not light language. I got that on the brain. Utilize the Akashic records. As you know, I teach Akashic Records Mastery and Immersion program, and there are many teachings. And this is a new question that I just love. So I'm going to be channeling the Lords of the Records and also the Greater Council that we work with, the Council on Harmonization. And whatever comes will come, and I can feel it coming now. And I will also love to have questions on that topic. If you think of questions while I'm in the records, then just pop them into the chat. I'll just only take questions from the chat because it's a beautiful way to not interrupt the flow, to keep the flow going. So with that, I invite you to sit back and relax. And as always, these are energetic transmissions that attune you a little more to your soul's truth, and take what resonates and let it become something that you sit with, that you might incorporate or adopt as a truth, or that you might ponder some more, or you might even ask further questions on it, because this is the version that's relevant for those who are going to be listening to this recorded message and the live message. And it's always very relevant to your life. We're making it relevant to what's happening right now on the planet, and what's happening in the ethos, and what's happening amongst humanity, and what's happening in order to allow it to be relevant to aspects of your consciousness rising, your conscious upbringing of soul self more further to the front and center through your heart, and your understanding of how we evolve and what we are here to do, and all kinds of other things. So there are many combined intentions. Those are just a few, and I welcome all the highest light beings that want to speak through to this group, this blessed group of light beings, yourselves, as we move forward. So with that, I'm going to step out of the way and allow the Lords of the Records and of the Lords of Light and the Council to come through. And so it is. And so it is. We are the Lords of the Records. You are in knowing of who we are. We manage many things day to day in the upkeeping of what is known as the Akashic field and the Akashic records, for human knowledge to ascend and for human awareness to continue to expand. And you, beloveds, you are at the forefront of a revolution in conscious thinking and conscious knowing and conscious being, in fact, where you are purely at a time of the least resistance that we've had in ages upon ages on this planet from the light forces that want to move you into newer and newer horizons of conscious being in the present moment. And we applaud your discernment and we applaud your commitment to yourselves to bring forward your light and the highest truths upon which you can stand in principles and values and knowing, and also have fun with that because, oh, isn't it true? It's more fun in the light and it's more fun in the conscious valuation and stabilization that the truth, whatever that is, and it does continue to evolve because your awareness evolves, but that the truth for this time brings. And so it is. And so it shall be. So we'd like to start this discussion by sharing a bit of background from ancient Mesopotamia and going back into the records of this planet and these timelines. In your vernacular, it would be in around the time 5500 BC. There were many scholarly beings who were ascended in form on the planet in what is known as ancient Sumeria and ancient Mesopotamia. And those are some of the oldest to date in the recollection history books of today's society. And in those times, the records were accessed very, very, very regularly. It was normal for people to know that they had a soul to ascend into more conscious connection with in these bodies that they brought forward in life. People had a keen awareness that, oh, we're actually in the records, and they're going to start speaking by the spokesperson is one who lived at that time in ancient Sumeria. And Sumeria and Mesopotamia were very similar terrains and very similar cultures at the time. So I am one who transcribed as a channel during those times, and I was in participation actively with these lords of the records and guides that you know. And so I was what's known as a scribe of the times and a scribe of the heavens. They used to call me, I'm a male in that time, they used to call me an agent of the heavens because I was keenly aware of accessing the heavenly forces that could open upon some visitor to my presence and bestow light, knowledge in the form of the highest light, just like we are doing in this moment, just like we do when we speak light language, just like you all live immersed in now. And so I was known as a keeper of the light, like you are called often. I was known as a scribe of the light. It was less known, the term channeling was not a term for something like channeling at that time. It was more, we had fielded certain positions that were known. It was like much more common as there are people who work today as cashiers or as police persons, or there are positions in society that are very common. And so a conduit to the heavens was actually quite common and known, and it was a regular event to migrate towards someone like me at that time. And just to be clear, that me, I'm channeling this being person. It was not me, Suzanne. It was this gentleman. He was a male at the time, just to be clear. People would migrate towards me when they needed high answers, and it was revered. And it wasn't always an exchange of money, but an exchange of reverence. And um, there were partnerships that were developed between what is known as the state, you could call it the state, and the the governing groups of organized humans. There, it wasn't so much like a government as much as a loving, organized group of very heart-centered leaders who were positioned as leaders of the time in various positions, and with one commonality, that there was a common agenda of the greatest good of all, very deeply set in our bloodlines. And that was unique to the human experience in some respects, but much more common than you might understand or think based on your history books and shows today. There was much more heart-centered unification than you would might think. And it was a time of great enlightenment. It wasn't so focused on growth of nations, which came much later. In a sense, it was focused on growth of, truly growth of love and growth of the divine nature of the human in a body. We were much more enjoying, bequeathed with enjoyment of the human experience as a very sensual experience in terms of being able to touch and taste and feel and see. And so you see, we had a heightened awareness of who we are and where we came from, and that transcended the everyday, oh yes, there were workaday needs to feed ourselves and beloveds and take care of business of the day, but it was much more heart-centered. And we bring that to you as a representation and the energetics of knowing that this has already been an experiment in many ways on the planet. And what's being deemed as the new earth energy, or the new earth ways of building societies and growing them, it has some precedent already on the planet, though you all are doing it much more rapidly and in a pace that is in alignment with what you are here to bring and do as Christus in conceivers. There's a conception happening on the planet with the Christus light that you are part of, and that's going to spark even more rapid evolution of growth of the heart-centered approach and embodiment of life, approach to life and embodiment of life. So to further answer this question, there were many men and women who came and went through lifetimes during the several centuries, well, several millennia prior to this and after this. It all started to diminish around 2000 BCE, that it became less heart-centered. But during these millennia, there were many men and women who came and went and offered their concessions as life bringers of the records. We were called life bringers of the records because we knew how to breathe new life into the situation and to this realm through the Akashic records playing field, which it is. And so it's my honor to share this with you today and share that the unique position that you all are in can lend itself to being seen as those similar kinds of conduit channels. You all are channels. You all are open gifts of enlightenment that you allow to pass through you. Our way became more formalized because it lasted for a long time. And we do know that uh, historical patterning is already in place, where the reverence for the work of you all, light workers, channels, light beings, healers, is going to normalize as a positionality in society that becomes mainstream, becomes just the same as nearly any other. And you can plan to see a number of ways this will manifest during each and every one of your lifetimes. So that is why we bring this forward, and the relevance of this, because the term mainstream, the term we were active members of society like all the others, and simply revered and honored for who we were in terms of being able to access the choice point realities from the records, from people's souls, and from historical events upon this plane and other planes, just like, for instance, we're doing right now. So that's the first example we wanted to share with you. And this is mostly in Mesopotamia that we're speaking. And now I will share similarly, because I have similar experience, that in Sumeria, there was a similar kindred allegiance to those who channeled. It was more oracular channeling that was the style, if you will, than formal access of the Akashic records, but it was all the same source. And so that society lasted longer and started to infiltrate more into the mainstream of what is your society today. The lineage that you follow, you could say that's the line that survived and thrived through various other epochs in the Earth's planetary history. Our Mesopotamian culture sort of diminished while others grew and emerged, and the Sumerian route, if you want to call it, would be what continued through the bloodlines and through the societies into today. So it's fun for us to reveal that as a formal understanding of where the branches of lineages of souls incarnating into human experience, and as you know, they tend to you tend to follow in the footsteps in families of those being able to access as oracular channels, as guides, as leaders of intuition, as that sort of thing. And that is the line where many know from ancient Greece, the oracles of ancient Greece, which were far more common than just the few oracles of Delphi. So with that, we're going to move over to a place on the planet. It's now what's called Greater Tajikistan. And there were cultures there that you may or may not know of through any history lines, except if you were near to the place. But there were ancient architects of light and record keeping in that general vicinity of what's now called Tajikistan, who were planting key codes, it is seeds in the form of key codes, into the grid of this earth, where the channel and flow of the Akashic records for people could be held and accessed. Because, as you know, there is a temporal relationship between the earth's energetic holdings and very, very vibrant grid works and the Akashic records of the events on this planet. And now that is being seeded anew by light workers like you every which where around the globe. And some of the ancient holdings from that area in Tajikistan are some of the most important in terms of how they still hold the force field of what we'll call the kernel of what has grown into now the access points and the abilities that you all are experiencing and expressing and utilizing. So we wanted to highlight that as a key conduit focal point, and perhaps some of you might even be guided there in your meditations, and be guided to discern and understand further. The key intentionality of that implantation, we'll call it, was to enable humans on this earth plane to access, kind of like plugging in a vacuum cleaner into a wall, and the vacuum cleaner turns on. That could be any device. It could be a computer, anything you plug in. But you know how much power comes from the wall that turns on a vacuum. It makes a lot of noise. It creates a lot of suction and vibration, and it does a very powerful job in your home. That's why we're using the metaphor for a vacuum cleaner, because that intentionality of the seeding in Tajikistan of the core kind of access points to the Akashic records for these experiences on Earth and other experiences is very, very empowering. And that has always been the intention from the Lords of Light on through the Lords of the Records and the other beings who guard this knowledge and wisdom and information very, very, very carefully. So allowing a place to plug into for empowerment. Do you see our point? That's the greatest gift of this system of accessing one's true self, true north, blueprints, knowledge, systems. Now, that's also not to say that there are cosmic way stations, if you will, cosmic holdings, the great cosmic version of the library is also vastly universal, and it has existed since the first creation point. And what has been created is a system to funnel from that vast the universe of everything into the earth plane through that intentionality created in Tajikistan, so that what comes through is relevant and helps civilizations grow, helps people understand themselves, helps universes be formed through intentionality and conscious choice. And ultimately, it is a warehouse, but also a place of resonance where the field can of you, the field of you as individuals of humanity, can be seeded and implanted with wisdom, and also where the trajectory can be decisively decisively changed and co-created. And that's always our biggest intentionality, is that accessing your truth through the records and through your intuition in any way, in any of the purest ways, is a way to embody your light so purely that you see clearly, that you receive clearly, and that you are enabling yourself to make powerful new choices, because every day is a new choice. Every hour is a new choice. Every breath is a new choice. And so with that, we're going to switch gears a little bit. So just a moment. Kina atira baka atira namaka atira nanana. Okay. So now I am channeling a beloved angelic priestess who was in form in the Andes before any of the civilizations that we know, that from which there are ruins. So I see her literally as an angelic in a white robe with a golden halo, and she incarnated in a very remote yet very highly elevated civilization that ended in 7,000 BC, but began 10,000 years before that. And that civilization, okay, so I'm going to switch to her voice. Our civilization was high not only in altitude, we chose that very specifically, but high in vibration, because we were some of the early players with what happens with strumming the chords of the universe, the universe's energy and heart energy, whilst in human form. And there have always been grand experimentation laboratories, if you will, that are civilizations on this planet that are involved in all sorts of different vibrational experiments, such as we shared in a recent channeling about a group that came here to truly experience the exquisiteness of smell, because the human experience does include smell and scent, and so many scents are so magnificent and healing and vibratory in the way they were created. So similarly, we were enjoying the life of high vibration. You could call it many things, but we called it high vibration on the planet, where we were recording. We were less involved with downloading anything, but rather recording high frequencies in the records that became part of the human, that have become part of the human genome and the experience. And by this, we mean the frequencies of divine love that pass through us, of peace, of grace, of the rose line, those kinds of high frequencies. We were establishing our understanding of how to move them from the cosmos version into the human version form. So you could think of us as weavers of new realities, just like you are weavers of new realities. And we share this because you all are learning how to vibrate these very powerful high-level frequencies like peace and love in a brand new way, at a very heightened pace, at a very rapid speed of change. And so we were involved in seeding the recordings for humankind of those vibrations through the systemization that really encompasses this experience. This experience is highly systematized, even though it's also obliged to leave every bit of freedom for free will choice, and thus natural law allows for any kind of randomness as well. So many of you have become aware of these frequencies and yourself as a bringer of new light, even if you're not involved in speaking about it or teaching about it. You know that you harness the new light. And what's happened is that you've learned how to embody those frequencies and how to tap them and how to call them in. And if you fall off the horse, how to get back on and into the oneness vibrational field that is your natural state. So by those terms, this lifetime was very relevant, that we thought to share as well. That this time of civilization was very relevant to share. And so, okay, I see there's some questions, but I'm going to keep going and then answer questions. So we'll go ahead and share one more teaching for you today. And this takes you on a voyage through the depths of the waters on this planet and into Lemuria. So if you might envision yourselves on a journey, seeing and feeling that intrepidly delightful water-based society. The water on this planet, as you know, is one of the most stabilizing and volatile and transmitting forces on this whole planet. Water contains everything needed for life and is essential to all life. And feel into this, because in the Lemurian civilization, there were founders and builders, and there were carriers and transmitters of all kinds of knowledge and wisdom coming from around the cosmos. And there were, in that case, a very formidable tribe of record keepers who kept up with and kept record of the society's comings and goings and transformations, because by all accounts, we know that it is very, it can be volatile, not to anchor in and ground the reality, point blank. That's why you're always encouraged to write down your thoughts in a journal, to write down your changes in a journal, to write down your intentions in a journal or on paper. It is a very important means of anchoring transformation. And in the Lemurian civilization, there was constant shifting and evolving and higher and higher light codes, just like is happening now, until the fall. So not in that time. So we want to establish that the recording of events, it happens naturally. It happens in your records. You already now have record from this transmission, for instance. But what we're saying is that when individuals and beings and groups and cohorts and civilizations record different things, it anchors in a way that's quite profound. And that's why there is so very much sharing today in the world scenario. So many, such ease of creating videos and books and podcasts and blogs to share what is discovered. It's imperative, and it's your version of this is being played out in all those dimensional modalities, if you will, or tool with all those tools, and recorded on the entire breadth of the internet. And that is a form of recording that is incredibly, incredibly powerful. Yes, either with shadow or light or whatever you want to call it, all of its love, all of it is of creation. And you have this keen version of the recordings of society that goes beyond anything that's ever been possible to this date. And in Lemuria, it was similar, but much more rudimentary, where there were always a host of recorders who recorded through light language into the books, we'll call it the books of those times on this plane, on this earth plane. Okay, so those are the dimensionalities we wanted to share, and now we'll go to some questions. And if you have any other questions, please send them in, share them in the chat. And we're not doing this by voice today. Okay, so one question. I'm following a tech guy for about 3 years and stopped following him weeks ago because of the drama and fear about all the computer hacking going on. Oh, actually, sorry, this is a very, very, very old question. I'm so sorry. Never mind that. Okay, there's a question. Did I understand it correctly that ancient knowledge and knowledge of divine supreme intelligence are stored both in the land and can be downloaded from the cosmos? And are there methods to connect with the wisdom, or is it an enlightenment for downloads? Okay, that's a beautiful question. Yes, you understood it correctly, that ancient knowledge from this planet is collected in the systems on this land. Now, you bring up a great question. It's also collected within the wisdom that trees hold and that animals bring, and that the waters and sea creatures hold. Every living thing has its own DNA and molecular structure that comes from a history and holds a certain vibrational force that is a contributor to this entire experience. And there is a source of all of that is firmly anchored in the Earth grid, which we're talking about, which largely was implanted in Tajikistan, what's modern Tajikistan, but it's now everywhere. We simply showed you that, but now it's everywhere. So through the DNA, the DNA also carries this information. So to sort of think of it like this, it's everything is stored in the land's grid, in the Earth grid, and DNA is created and passed and used as a mechanism to pass it down throughout the ages. And DNA is always changing as well, as you know. You're changing your DNA rapidly at this time, bringing forth what you want to bring forth from the history and leaving off what is no longer viable or valid or wanted in your new Earth scenarios and play scenarios. And yes, there is also a cosmic source of all of it that truly is the source. So where the cosmic source moves through you and every living thing and through the Earth's grid and Gaia, there's an experience. The living things then experience it. So you experience the truths from Gaia and her grid, but also from the cosmic source. And your Akashic records is also both. It's from the earth plane, but it's also beyond that because you're from beyond the earth. So that answers part of that question. And then can it be downloaded from the cosmos? Yes, that's why we're talking about this, because the method that we're talking about, there are other methods through transcendent forms of meditation. There are many ways to tap into any and all of this wisdom. We're talking about the Akashic records because it holds the vibrational field resonance for all of this. And so when you're tapping into the records of all time intentionally, then you're tapping into the Akashic field. So as an explanation, you might simply like tap into the vibration of love or the frequency from the planet Venus or the vibration of God. That doesn't necessarily come through the records. That experience would be recorded in the records. But when you're asking questions, the nature of knowing and wisdom and conscious understanding, it's coming through the records. And so, yes, all of that is downloaded. This is a download that you're receiving. And there are many methods to connect. The question says, are there methods to connect with the wisdom, or is it an enlightenment for downloads? Okay, yes, there are many methods to connect, and that's one of the things we teach is how to connect through the Akashic records. But there's also the innate connection that you also all have that already is connected. So it's more a question of, yes, the more enlightened you become, the more open you become, the more heart open, all-knowing you become. You don't necessarily need to use the methods. The methods are, in principle, like getting your vehicle on the highway to reach the destination of the source of that information. But the more you become the more you live in oneness and harmony through yourselves, the more you actually have deep, profound knowing without having to get on your bicycle and ride on the highway, if that makes sense. So it's a progression for most people. Now, that being said, you all know very well that you have experiences and very often where you have deep, profound knowing that is coming from your own source embodied soul connection, and what's you're funneling from your source records, if you will. So, okay. All right. Well, that's the only question that we see. So let me just tune in to see if there's anything else. Okay. So some of you might still, and this, by you, we mean humanity. Some of humanity, you all, might still fear this deep connection because it's such a powerful force of love and vibratory frequency on the planet that the unknowing of that and the seeming perception that it's unfamiliar can cause disharmony and what seems like anxiety or fear about it, or the beliefs that, oh, that's not for me, or the any and all kinds of beliefs. The truth is that the core you, that's of the universe, that is source, and that is a very high level being, that core you knows how to evolve into use of all of this shared wisdom, just like what I have done in order to be here in front of you today. So it's a matter of aligning. It's a matter of intention. It's a matter of, yes, learning. It's a matter of inspiration and activating those light fields in you that can and do carry such uh, channels of wisdom, that carry the channel to be able to channel the wisdom. So we are simply delighted to share this and trust that it is of utilization in some point during your journey. And there's plenty more of this where this came from whenever you are ready to know more. So thank you all for joining in this discussion. And we, the lords of all light creation, the lords of the records, and your guides and your higher selves, we are all in this together in the glorious initiative of raising the bar of consciousness and eliminating to our greatest degree separation, so that all beings are know how free they are and how truly blessed they are to be in the highest connection within themselves possible when they so choose. And that, dear friends, is the key. Thank you, and have a beloved, beautiful day.